evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today on Filmaru, we're going to be interviewing Falco, the one of the creators of Slice of Life, By Visibility, a bisexual anthology, Haunting, The Dancer, and finally, Like Father, Like Daughter. Now, sadly, we won't be having Catherine Calamia on the show because she has to go help her brother move. But for now, we've got her partner who is just as talented. Now, sadly, I believe I've only been able to read Slice of Life, By Visibility, and the first 3 books of The Haunting. I've also had the honor of meeting them both for the first time at last year's Super Jersey Comic Expo. Now, before we get on to the questions, how about you tell the audience about yourself?
Hey everyone, Phil here. Really glad to be on. Thanks so much for having me and for supporting the books. You said you haven't read all of them, but you read so many, so that's really great to hear.
Yeah, they're really good.
Thanks, appreciate it. And Kat sends her regards. She apologized for not being able to make it, but we spent so much time together that I think I know exactly how she'll answer a lot of these questions.
Even better. So I guess we'll get into the questions now. So when did you two first realize you guys liked making comics and drawing?
For Kat, she's been a lifelong comic fan. Her father turned her onto comics when she was very young. And, she's been reading since she was in middle school, high school, going to the comic book store. And, she started out reviewing comics and eventually made the transition to creating. She studied, she has a master's in TV writing, so she's very much involved in media and has been for a very long time, and has been creating comics, self-publishing comics for about 6 years now. And for myself, also been a long-time fan of comics. I started reading comics in high school, and I also studied writing when I was in college. And Kat and I are friends outside of the comic stuff. We were introduced by a mutual friend who went to school with both of us, and we actually didn't talk about comics for the first 4 years of our friendship. We talked about comics, but not like creating comics. And then after a couple of years, I was like, I've been following your comics, and it's something I'd be interested in breaking into. She was very encouraging, and then I published Haunting, my first series, and had a really great time doing it. And after about a year or so of that, Kat and I were just chatting at a Halloween party, and we were talking about what would it be like if my book Haunting and her superhero book Like Father, Like Daughter crossed over. The joke turned into like, oh, this sounds like a lot of fun, we should do it. So we just rewrote it together, and it was a one shot, and it was a ton of fun, and we flew through it so quickly. After that, we were like, okay, maybe we should try something new, something accessible. And we're both queer creators. We both spend almost all of our time talking about queerness and queer media, so we knew we wanted to tell a queer story. That snowballed eventually into Slice of Life, which we publish on WEBTOON. We've been publishing for a little under a year now. We have about 35,000 subscribers, and we just hit 1 million views last month. So it's we're really surprised and thankful for how quickly it snowballed. How recognizable it is. It's definitely our most recognizable property because it's on WEBTOON, and that's kind of the long and short of how each of us got into comics, and then how we started collaborating.
Well, let me just say congratulations on so many views on your comics.
Thank you, appreciate it.
And I guess my next question would be, do you guys have any other hobbies?
Yeah, definitely. Kat loves basketball. I don't love basketball. I like basketball, but I play more than I would if she wasn't one of my best friends. So that's definitely her big hobby. She also plays guitar. She's picked that up recently. Me, I'm a big movie fan. I watch movies all the time. I like swimming a lot. So that's my other hobby. We always like to say that our hobbies are. It's hard to define a hobby because both of us love comics and media so much, but it also is like a big part of work, especially for Kat. Because outside of just creating comics, she's involved in media. She's writing for Newsrom, IGN, Read Pop. So Popverse, excuse me. So we have to take a break from all that stuff and find other things to do a lot of the time. We try to stay active and try to have fun outside because we're not going to go outside for work.
Alright, well, that leads me into a separate question that is not on the list that I sent you guys. What would your favorite movie/comic be?
My favorite movie of all time is probably Back to the Future. I have a real soft spot for it. I grew up watching the whole trilogy, and I basically have that movie memorized. Actually, I don't know Kat's favorite movie. She's not really a favorite type of person. She has a lot of stuff she likes. I don't know what she would say is her favorite movie. So that might be something you'd have to ask her if you have her on separately.
All right. And the comic?
Favorite comic? I think I'd have to go with Watchmen being a favorite of mine. I just really like how it reinvented the entire genre and, showed people that comics are such a diverse medium. They can be so many different things and could say so many different things.
I gotta say mine would be more like Miss Marvel or the Miles Morales run of the Spider-Man comics, like the newer ones.
Both also amazing, and Miss Marvel's getting her time to shine in the mainstream media very soon.
Yeah, but this is the first time any of my fans have heard this, but I'm not too happy about what they're doing with her with the cosmic powers. Like, I'm so used to the mix of Reed Richards and technically Ant-Man, how she can stretch her body in certain ways while also changing the size of it from giant to as small as an ant.
Yeah, I wasn't aware that they'd made significant changes to the show. I made a rule for myself a few years ago to try to know as little as possible about comic book property adaptations until they come out, because the rumors are so rampant. But this is actually the first I'm hearing some of the changes, so I guess I'll see how it turns out.
Yeah, we're all hoping for good things.
And you mentioning the Miles Morales Spider-Man actually reminded me of Kat's favorite movie, which was Into the Spider-Verse. That should have came to mind right away. That is her favorite movie. She's not a big rewatcher, but she's rewatched that one several times.
Nice. It really is one of the better Spider-Man movies.
Yeah, definitely agree.
What is your favorite genres of music?
I'm pretty basic. I like a lot of pop music. I like my favorite artist is Sarah Bareilles. That tells you everything you need to know about me. But I love like Taylor Swift. I like Lana Del Rey, and Kat has a very diverse music taste. She's very much into a little bit of everything. I'm not a Renaissance man like she is.
How did you come up with the stories for your comics, and which one would you guys say is your favorite to work on?
Each comic has its own origin story. For Haunting, my horror book kind of started it all. I just wanted to tell a story about, I wanted to kind of tell the anti-hero story, like a story about somebody who, doesn't carry the weight of the world on his shoulders, somebody who doesn't take any responsibility for his actions, and that kind of changed, that kind of developed over time into a horror book about a teenage boy who makes ghosts appear wherever he goes and just kind of doesn't give a shit about it. Like if Paranorman was a little bit of a prick, and that was just, I wanted to have fun and I wanted to tell a horror story because I love horror. So that was kind of the origin of my first comic. And then Slice of Life, like I mentioned earlier, we both really wanted to tell a queer story, and we both loved WEBTOON. So those were the two golden rules we had going in. And the details, anime character comes to life and falls in love with a cheerleader, that we fleshed out together. I had been toying around with the idea of a darker story, a little bit of a heavier story than what Slice of Life turned out to be, of a story about an anime character coming to life and having to learn. An anime character will only ever experience like the big moments that you see on TV, and having to learn about like the little moments and finding joy in like the little things in life. It had been something I'd been tossing around myself, and I mentioned it to Kat, and we fleshed that idea out into Slice of Life, what it would eventually become. I'd say, to answer your second question, Slice of Life is probably our favorite property to write. We really like how the characters developed and how the relationships between them developed between our core 4 characters, and also the supporting cast that we're also building out. I think a comic, and to a certain extent any media, is only as good as its as the world around it, as its supporting cast. And I think with Slice of Life, with a webtoon, with something that we can release so regularly compared to our other titles, there's a real opportunity to kind of build out the world before you, and just take a little detour. Maybe we don't have a chapter that even features our leads, that would feature Yuriko or Lucy, our romantic leads. Maybe we focus entirely on Lucy's sister, our anime super fan Raven, or we'll focus on Lucy's boyfriend, ex-boyfriend, or we'll focus on on a character who isn't part of our main cast. We'll focus on their father. We'll focus on school bully. There's a lot of really interesting stories that we can and are in the process of telling through Slice of Life about just life. I was a little more long-winded than I wanted to be, but
no, I get it.
That's definitely our favorite.
I mean, it's definitely a lot of our favorite. It's my personal favorite so far, compared to the other ones that I've read, because it kind of has that the devil is a part-timer kind of vibe to it, where he's learning to become a worker for a McDonald's ripoff, where here it's a anime character learning to be a real person and live out a high school life.
That's pretty funny that you compared it to Devil as a Part-Timer, because Kat and I always joke that if we ever brought in the anime, Yuriko, our character, has like an arch nemesis, and we always joke and say if he came to life, it would be Devil as a Part-Timer. He would be the manager at McDonald's somewhere. We joked about that as recently as like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I've been waiting for that, because I want to see the main villain of the anime come back in some way after he died.
Never say never. That's all I'll say.
What about bi visibility? What is the story on that?
So Kat is bisexual, and she and I, since we met, have always had a lot of discussion about queerness and queer representation in media. And it's no secret to anyone that bisexual representation is pretty sorely lacking, especially a few years ago. I think there have been some big leaps in the last couple of years. We've had some major comic book characters like Tim Drake and John Kent, come out as bisexual. And then, recently we had Heartstopper on Netflix, did some really great bisexual representation. So I think things have been pretty good the past year, but especially like a couple of years ago when we first started kicking around the idea for bi visibility, there was just it was very lacking in the media we consume, especially in comics. So we really wanted to create a venue for bisexual creators, or people who don't identify as bisexual, who have that bisexual story to tell, to tell different kinds of stories in different genres. And on a whim, Kat floated the idea once. Like, she was a little nervous about it. She'd never run an anthology, and I said, absolutely, you definitely have to do it. And we had already at this point collaborated on our crossover between our solo books. So she asked me to be an assistant editor for that first volume, and we put together submission forms. We got over 100 submissions of stories. We were really happy with the reception, and then eventually when we picked out our 9 stories, we made our 40-page comic. We were really happy with the diversity of the types of stories. We had some romance, some slice of life. We also had some fantasy, some sci-fi, and thankfully it exploded on Kickstarter. It's our best Kickstarter to date. Over 1,000 people backed it. It's just warms our hearts anytime we see somebody like at a convention or somebody who messaged us talk about, I've never seen something like this before. I've never seen bisexual representation to this extent, something that so unapologetically celebrates bisexuality. So it's been a real treat, a really positive experience for us. And now we have a second volume in the works that's more than double the size of the first. And we'll be launching that in June, and we're really excited to give even more creators the opportunity to tell stories and different kinds of bisexual stories.
That's actually really awesome because me and my friend were actually really into it, and at the moment I'm trying to hunt down my copy of it because I kind of want to talk about a few of the stories that were in it. Right after I met you guys at the convention, I showed her the book and I gave it to her, and she really enjoyed a few of the stories.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear.
I mean, personally, I'm going through the book right now, and I did like a lot of the love stories, like the D&D one.
Oh yeah, that's a personal favorite of mine as well.
That and I think it's called Punchline.
Right, Punchline. That was the autobiographical story. Fun fact about that. So it's a story just about an artist who telling the story of her journey coming out as bisexual. She actually submitted as an artist, not to tell a story, but we had everyone who submitted, writer, artist, colorist, etc., write just a one-pager about themselves and their relationship to bisexuality, whether they identify as bisexual or not. And Kay Rose, the artist and writer behind Punchline, had such a beautiful story and such an earnest story in her one-pager that we said, instead of doing the art for someone else's story, would you want to tell your own? Thankfully, she said yes. I think it's one of the best ones we got in there.
I kind of gotta disagree. I do love Punchline heavily, but personally my favorite was I Wish.
Oh, you know what? My fiance actually wrote that one.
Oh, wow.
So I'll pass that along to him after this, but I'm so glad to hear.
Yeah, I mean, with certain stories, it's very rare to actually see the, and I've mentioned this before, the childhood friend actually turning out to be the love interest in a book. Because you usually see the main character going after, like, the jock, the goth girl, or whatever person appears out of nowhere.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think that there's a pressure in storytelling to kind of have the reader meet the love interest with you. But I think that, a lot of the times we do find love with people that we've known our entire lives who know us the best. I think that's what Julius, my partner who wrote that story, had in mind. When he wrote that story. And it's also one of my favorites. He actually is writing a follow-up to that for the second volume. So that's exciting. We'll get to see more of those characters in the next volume. By Visibility.
I can't wait. Next question would be, who would you say is your biggest influence?
I think that we're both pretty heavily influenced by a lot of WEBTOON creators. We both, obviously we're big fans of all types of comics, but when we started creating Slice of Life, we really dove into WEBTOON and tried to read as many as possible, especially queer WEBTOONs. Tiki TX, who writes Kiss It Goodbye, is definitely a big influence for both of us. I think that's one of the best GL stories on WEBTOON. We really like the pacing of the relationships and the complexities of the two lead characters, the way that the supporting cast sort of builds itself out as the story progresses. So that's definitely one of our biggest inspirations when it comes to Slice of Life, I would say.
Out of all your characters, who would you say is your favorite and why?
That's a tough question. I think that my favorite character to write across all of my comics is probably Bram, the lead of Haunting, just because, like I mentioned earlier, sometimes it's just kind of fun to write a bratty teenage boy who just doesn't care about anything. There's a lot of room to be sardonic, sarcastic, just kind of like riff on the seriousness of the situation around him. So I definitely always have a lot of fun with that. And then also finding the pathos in that, where at what point can he no longer just shrug something? Getting to those moments always is a treat as a writer. So I kind of get to have it all there.
I definitely can say I feel like I've heard a very similar story in comics before. Technically, Spider-Man kind of did it with his very first outing as the Spider-Man. Trying to use his powers to gain a car, gain romance, and get a better life for himself. And it takes the death of one of his biggest supporters, his uncle, to actually bring him to light.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, I think it's kind of intrinsic to the story, to a superhero story, to have like that temptation. I mean, if you're a larger than life person, if you have these abilities, of course you're going to be tempted. And I think that I shouldn't say any story should explore that, because obviously every story is different, every character is different. But I think that it's always an interesting angle to explore, especially with a heroic character, a character who will learn to be better, who is going to learn to be a great hero or a better person.
And actually, from what I've seen so far, I'm assuming that Brahm is going to have a similar moment later on, because right now you said he's a little less caring about the world because of this power that has prevented him from having a normal life. He also doesn't really care right now about what this power is doing to other people, and I'm hoping the one girl he meets in the first three volumes actually is his weakness, I guess you could say, or the person that influences him to be a better person.
No, I mean, that's definitely something that I'm very interested in exploring. Just like, at what point can Bram no longer just shrug things off, can no longer just be a jerk and be aloof and uncaring, especially, he's been alone for a long time, but now he has someone in Faith, and the female lead of the series, who stood up for him, who, didn't immediately turn her back on him as soon as she found out what his deal was, and, what his past is and how many people he's hurt. I think that's kind of the core of the story, the interplay between the two of them, the idea that, he refuses to take any responsibility for himself and his actions and the pain he causes, while she takes all responsibility. From the moment Bram tries to check into the motel that she's working at, she feels responsible for him. She tries to help him, and that's something that'll continue even into later issues I'm writing right now. I'm in the process of writing issue 6. We have 3 issues published right now, and that's a conversation that I'm having right now as well. It's kind of the cornerstone of the series, and the way that the characters will develop. I think, to answer your question, absolutely, that is a question, a reckoning that Bram is going to have. It's easy to be aloof and cool and uncaring when you're by yourself, but when you're with somebody who challenges you, you either have to change, or you have to just give up, or you have to distance yourself from the force that's trying to instill a change in you. So definitely something very much that we explored in future issues.
What is your main goal for these comics? Like, what is the end game?
I think every comic has a different goal, and also every comic has the same goal, which is just to tell a good, cohesive, complete story with fully realized character arcs. So that's the basic bare bones answer. But practical goals differ for each comic. I think that when you look at Haunting and Like Father, Like Daughter, and The Dancer, those are very much our self-published Kickstarter books. They're stories that we like, and that they're stories that we love, of course, that we want to keep telling until we reach the conclusion of the arcs that we have laid out for us. And, we are very comfortable with the control we have in self-publishing them on Kickstarter crowdfunding, because we don't have a publisher to answer to, or we don't have particular marks that we need to hit, so we have a lot of freedom in that sphere. With Slice of Life, the goals kind of vary. I think that we found a lot of success on WEBTOON so far. Our goal is to keep finding success, keep finding reach, because WEBTOON affords a reachability that most traditional comics don't. Being free to read, thousands of people can read the book pretty easily, versus if you have a book that you're publishing for traditional means, there's there's a paywall behind it, whether that's to buy a physical book or to purchase a digital copy. So with Slice of Life, I think the goal is just to get it in front of as many people as possible. And it always really warms our hearts whenever we're at a convention or as recently as a few days ago at a restaurant, and just pull up the webtoon on our phone and the waiter will be like, "Oh, I know that." So, that's our goal for Slice of Life. And then we have other books in development where the goal is different. We have a book in development right now where the goal is the direct market. The goal is publishing through traditional means, ending up in comic stores. So I think whenever we enter into a new comic, we always have kind of different goals in front of us. Sometimes they transform a little bit. Slice of Life's original goal was start on Webtoon and then maybe try moving towards a more traditional publishing route, but we've really enjoyed the Webtoon format for it, so we pretty much are planning to just stick with that right now for that series.
Okay. Well, I think you already answered question 9, but question 8 is, are there any future arcs or storylines you are really excited to explore in your comics?
Obviously, we're really excited for the story where Yuriko and Lucy, the leads of Slice of Life, officially become a couple. Something that will happen before the end of our first season of the series, and that's up. We always say that with queer stories, we hate when, and thankfully this has been not as prevalent recently as it used to be, but we always hate when the couple doesn't get together until the last episode, and then we don't actually get to see them together. So as soon as we entered into the Slice of Life, as soon as we started formulating the story, the first part is just the build up to them getting together, and then there's so much story with them as a couple. What do they have? What challenges do they face as a couple, both in both external and internal? And how do they grow and change together, along with their individual issues, not just the challenges they face as a couple, but their respective individual challenges as anime character come to life, and as a closeted teenager, as a twin, any whatever aspects of their characters don't disappear when they become a couple. So we're really interested in how we explore that when they're together. So that's something we're super excited about. We have a couple arcs coming up in other series. We have both Kat and I each have stories in the next volume by Visibility that we're really excited to share with people. They're a bit of a departure from the kind of stuff we usually write, so we're excited for people to see those. In Haunting, the 4th issue is kind of a cap to the first arc, so I'm really excited for people to read that. It's kind of just the explosive conclusion and changes the series forever. So I think we have moments in all of our series that we're really excited for.
Good. Any new merchandise you guys are working on?
Right now, we are in the process. We are developing a line of enamel pins. We actually have a Kickstarter for it live right now, for By Visibility. So, the book itself did so well. We always see such positive, so many positive reactions to, the representation of bisexuality. So, it felt like a good next step. That people love pins, especially at conventions, was up the representation. Let them wear a pin that immediately shows your bi pride. Also maybe introduces some people to bi visibilities. Maybe get some people who aren't into comics interested in checking one out. So, we have bi visibility pins, which have been doing very nicely. And then, if the reception stays strong, we'd love to expand out, maybe try pins for other properties. Most likely, Slice of Life would be the next logical conclusion. We did plush dolls for Slice of Life, which have also moved very nicely on our Kickstarters. We only just got them in, so we haven't gotten to try them at conventions yet. So we're really excited to see what the reception is there. But, we always say that comics are a little bit of a hard sell. Not everybody is into comics. Not everybody is as willing to try a new comic versus like a character who's existed for decades at a time. They can have more confidence in relating to. So, we're always trying to be flexible and develop other kinds of other ways to attract the eye, whether that's the pins or plushes or trading cards or just art posters. So I'm really excited. I don't know what the next thing will be, but I'm excited for it.
Okay. And finally, is it possible that we'll ever get a chapter of Slice of Life where we get to see the Boys Love comic cover become a reality?
Oh, wait, you see the gender swap version.
Yep.
I'll never say anything's impossible. The thing we love about Slice of Life is that it's real stories. It's about life. It's about real life, but it's also just built on fantasy and built on anime character coming to life. So nothing is impossible, and that is personally something I would love to say. We're actually in the process of developing some BL stories for other comics, and Slice of Life, in as much as it's the story of Yuriko and Lucy and their relationship, will also feature some BL stories coming up, something that has been planned since the very beginning. And who knows, maybe at some point we'll see Yuriko and Lucy, their male versions, what their relationship is like. I'd love that.
I'm smelling a multiverse.
There we go. Well, thank you for your very thoughtful questions. It's been an absolute pleasure talking through all this with you.
No problem. Is there anything you would like to say to the audience that we might not have touched on, or maybe share your social media?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I would say if you are interested in enamel pins, you can check out our current Kickstarter, the 5 Visibility Pins, or if any of the comics that we talked about today sound cool to you, check us out on Twitter. You can find Kat at Comic Uno, you can find me at Phil Falco Writes. We're always talking about our properties. You can find links to Slice of Life on WEBTOON. Check that out for free. I think it's really accessible. I think it has something for everybody, so I think that's a great place to start. And then if you want to check out our other series, we have stores all over the place for them. You can find them on our socials.
Awesome. So yeah, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Click the little notification bell for more of our content and to see more great interviews like this and more of our reviews. And thank you for being on the show.
My pleasure.
And you guys have a great night.